Welcome back to this already the final episode of today's Price of Business, final segment rather. And I'm delighted to be with you. I love that song. I wish you could have heard all of it. Sigmund and I had this huge debate between the break of how much to air. But you know what? I like the song. It is so current. It's so relevant to what's going on today because, there was a time when we used to feel like someone was watching us and we were just merely paranoid. Probably needed to lay off of the hard stuff. But now we've got every legitimate reason to feel paranoid, which is why the government is becoming more and more okay for you to use the hard stuff, because maybe then you'll think you have an excuse for feeling paranoid. It's because you should feel paranoid. Government is watching us everywhere, Sigmund Kramer.
I know. In the shower.
Yeah.
While you're washing your hair.
That's right.
You just never know.
The reason why that price went up on that bottle of shampoo is because of the little camera they installed.
Oh, wow. That makes a lot more sense.
So,
Big brother.
But yeah, we heard, during just, I guess in the last 24 hours, last couple of days, I guess, we heard of this gentleman in Baltimore who, while others were watching what was happening on the streets, he kept noticing this plane going around and round and round. And he noticed that this Cessna-looking type plane had an unusual camera on the bottom. Meanwhile, I had a word, had the code letters on the back, identification code. He looked it up and started doing some research, and one thing led to another, finally realizing that it was a Justice Department airplane.
Wow.
And apparently some phone calls were made, and we found out those airplanes include technology to be able to get data from cell phones.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Great.
So,
well, you heard about also the fake cell towers that are made to look like trees and stuff.
Yes.
All over the place, and they're actually collecting their spoof cell towers. They're like capturing signal, and I mean, it's folks. George Orwell was
Very
right.
Orwellian.
Big Brother in 1984, and it's here. It's in a big way. It's here.
No question about it. And so, my question always is which dystopia is the U.S. most like? I always kind of think we're like Brave New World, where pleasure and convenience and making sure you're staying out of trouble is the most important virtues and values of a people. No longer holding people accountable, just doing what we're expected to do. Versus the more Orwellian approach. But the more I think about it, it's looking more and more Orwellian every day.
Yeah, Ray Bradbury with Fahrenheit 451.
Great movie. Love that book.
And George Orwell with 1984. And, of course, Animal Farm.
Animal Farm.
That's probably the closest we have come. But,
another Orwell hit.
Yeah. So it's difficult for me to be proud of America when we have these types of things being done to its citizens, which clearly are in violation. Could you imagine the Founding Fathers finding out that we have so little actual civil liberty, so little freedom, and that the government is literally watching our every move and is keeping tabs on our every communication?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, back then they didn't have cell phones, but they had letters. Would they have been at all okay with the government seizing every letter that went from one person to another and checking it out before it went on?
Yep.
That's the kind of stuff that we fought against and wanted to get away from, from England.
Yeah, Benjamin Franklin may have put it best when he said, those who sacrifice liberty for security deserve neither.
Right.
And that's exactly what we're doing on a large, large scale. All these frightened people, what's interesting is the neoconservative types, who are many of whom are gun-toting, real strong in their beliefs. In America, of course.
John Wayne, America.
Yeah, very, very much so. Yet they are so concerned about selling out our freedom in order to feeling a little more secure. And then you talked about during one of our breaks, I guess back when our buddy Bob Loser was here, about the fact that, the government has a 95% failure rate when it comes to dealing with real potential terrorist threats, according to an audit by the Department of Homeland Security. But they do this kind of watching of its own citizens. Makes you wonder who they perceive the real criminals and real enemy are.
Well, and they, of course, would say, well, we're trying to nab the terrorists. How many terrorists do they think were in Baltimore?
Yeah.
That was not a terrorist situation. Why weren't they over Boston after the bombing? Maybe they were. But there's a big difference between what happened in Baltimore and what happened in Boston. And I could almost understand, the planes, after 9/11, we had fighter jets in the air.
Yeah.
I understood that.
Absolutely.
I really did, because that was a threat. The air had become a potential vector for enemy attacks. I understand that. What I don't understand is why anybody who calls themselves a patriot, a Republican, a conservative, is okay with the NSA, the FBI, and every other branch of government keeping tabs on every little bit of information about us as citizens. We, the people, are supposed to be in charge. And we have ceded every single responsibility over to really bureaucrat nightmare that has no accountability. They are not elected. And the ones that are elected, by the way, are allowing this stuff to happen and pushing this stuff forward, so maybe they shouldn't be elected.
Shouldn't be elected.
We need to change the entire environment in D.C. so that people have more of an idea that we, the people, the American citizen, are running the show, not them, and that they don't need to keep tabs on us like they are.
No question about it. That is exactly right. And so, and I wonder, we've got to have security. We have to have some safety, but there's got to be a third way. There's got to be a way that's different from complete abdication and ignoring that I think led to September 11th, and then this extreme case in which it feels like government is now encroaching into every single aspect of our lives. There's got to be a third way.
Right. I can deal with the regulation aspect. I don't like it, but when I hear about, Obama's administration has just released 250,000 new pages of regulation, that's annoying, right? But to think that all these entities are actually spying on us and collecting data, and what are they going to use with it? Hey, Kevin, I see it in schools. I see it because of federal involvement in our public schools. Now they're wanting to collect health data, mental health data on children. What do you think that's going to be used for in the future? This is all part of the standardized testing process.
Well, we know what it was used in, eventually used for in the early 1930s in Germany.
That's right. And,
And you say that can't happen in America? You ought to ask what happened in the Deep South in the 1940s and 1950s with eugenics.
Well, and look at the Tuskegee Airmen. So many things are done. So many things are done in the name of science, in the name of civil, social, civil, rights and all this. And in reality, it's totalitarianism.
It is.
And we need to fight against it. And so this is going to be a blip on the radar that there's FBI planes out there. I don't see anybody protesting. I don't see anybody holding up signs and rallying. I don't see any outrage over it. It's just going to allow to happen again and again. Look, they just did the American Freedom Act or whatever instead of the Patriot Act.
Just a watered-down version of the Patriot Act.
And that's all it is. And people
all it's going to do is slow down a little bit the speed at which they get it. And to me, you talk about crony capitalism. It's almost like the epitome. We somehow trust big business holding this data, but we don't trust our government holding this data.
Somehow Verizon's going to be working in our best interest all of a sudden. Comcast and AT&T and all those guys. They should be held at arm's length from our data, from our private lives, and instead they're being co-opted by our government to spy on us, and it's sickening.
Crazy. By the way, when you said outrage, you should have put in our Sheila Jackson Lee quote. But anyway, outrage. Yeah, I'm outraged. Yeah, that's the name of a new monster that's going to be in an Avenger movie too. So good stuff though, but sad times indeed. Don't you think, Sigmund?
Maddening times, and really, folks, if you don't think this is going to affect your life, at some point it will.
Absolutely.
It may take a while, but it will.
When we come back tomorrow, we're going to have much more for you. I do want to remind you, today's show brought to you in part by our friends over at Coaching Through Chaos and Taxman Bob Lozer. Have a great rest of your day. Spend it wisely right here on this station.